Hello and welcome to Light Warrior Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Can, author of the #1 best-selling book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, How to Harness Your Gifts, Fulfill Your Purpose, and Create a Life of Joy. And if you are new to my podcast, I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button and also join our light medicine community on Circle. We'll put the links below. We also have a free gift for you called a sensitivity empowerment guide. So if you are highly sensitive person who is probably 1/3 of the population, and you would like to have some hints on how to navigate your way through that sensitivity, so you feel more empowered, you feel better, and not feel like your sensitivity is like a curse, then the Sensitive Soul Empowerment Guide is for you. And that's at sensitivesoulguide.com. You can get that free download, my gift to you. Now, with me today, we are doing another dimensional deep dive with my good friend, Marcus Bird. And he is the creator of the Activator Healer Coach program, of which I am one of the students in the program. And my healing modality, Topican Healing Method, and Activator Healer Coach is just so perfectly aligned with each other. We go super weird sometimes because of like the rabbit holes, and it's been wonderful learning some of the ancient Egyptian stuff from Marcus, and then really making sense of some of the like direct transmissions from source, like this is what you need to heal, and I didn't have words for it. It was really great to hear these words. So we've been having this whole series where we're kind of going down whatever rabbit holes show up. This one actually, Marcus, is almost a little bit like not so rabbit holy, if that's a word.
Well, anything's possible, Karen. Don't speak too soon.
Yes.
I was going to say.
Gosh, yeah. So I thought today, I'm so glad you're here, Marcus. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Oh, thank you.
Again, Nidhi, I'm going to tell people about the different offerings that you have. And today's actual topic is around frequency medicine, because you've been kind of sharing some of that over time, and I know you've been developing something that's very interesting. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to give people like a background, for our podcast, people have heard about people analyzing voice and then quote unquote treating people with song, voice, humming, machines that we have several in America. Some are free apps that you have on your phone. Others are, thousands of dollars, where they deliver some sort of frequency to your body to help you heal. And you were trying to explain to me how, what you're developing is really kind of unique and different. And so we're here to, share some of what you have to offer. So I'll let you take it away and tell us more about how this all came to be.
Well, I think this is just a beautiful extension of the Activator Healer Coach sort of process, and an extension to the beautiful information that I received and the ancient Egyptian information now really merging with sort of modern science or quantum sort of science. And, some of the things that, people like Nikola Tesla shared with us through his teachings and information around, energy and vibration and frequency. And, some of the other sort of famous people, even Albert Einstein, who suggested that, frequency is the next sort of breakthrough in medicine. And so there's some really exciting things that are sort of playing out right now around this concept of frequency medicine that we call quantum harmonics. There's a lot of exploration happening right now. But I think if we come back to the sort of fundamental sort of core aspect of it, and that relates in sort of around this concept of resonant fields and resonance, which is what we and anything that vibrates. And I kind of love this because it really does dovetail into sort of science that we're aware of and sort of quantum physics, as in, we are made up of atoms. Everything's made up of atoms and atomic particles, and also then subatomic particles. And as science continues to smash atoms in the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, they're finding more and more of these, particles, smaller and smaller fundamental particles. But at the sort of essence of all of those, they have a vibratory sort of spin quality to them. And again, if we dive deeper and deeper and deeper to the what quantum physicists are exploring right now is the absolute fundamental building blocks of matter. We find these little sort of strings. And this quantum sort of information called the superstring theory. And the superstring theory states that everything that we see from a matter point of view is made up of vibrating strings. And I kind of like to think of these vibrating strings a little bit like guitar strings or strings in a piano or a musical instrument, in that depending on how they're vibrating will depend on how they inform subatomic particles, which then obviously informs the matter that those atomic particles are coming together to create. So in essence, when we talk about frequency medicine or quantum harmonics, we're talking about potentially the absolute fundamental building blocks of matter in this dimension of reality. So it's kind of exciting how this is playing out. And we know that, many, many years ago, Royal Rife developed sort of frequency medicine. He was sort of the father or grandfather of frequency medicine, and he was famous for curing or making headroads into helping people with cancer. And in fact, back in those days, they had a party for him. The American Medical Association had a party for him, and the party was called the Cure of All Disease, and they celebrated him until they decided not to. And and
Wow,
so,
I did not know about the celebration.
oh yeah,
I just thought he was
yeah.
massively censored and more
No.
awful things than that. Wow.
Before that happened, they had a party for him, and you can see the newspaper articles. If you do a search for it, you'll see
Wow.
the newspaper articles they wrote about him, and the dinner party was called the Cure to All Disease. That's what they called it. Not long after that, his research all burnt, and his offices were destroyed, and just by accident, a fire started. I mean, these things happen, right, Karen?
Yeah, just to think, what kind of laser weapons did they have back then?
Well, yeah, whatever happened, it sort of happened.
Uh,
So there's been a lot of sort of exploration into this over the years, and it's really starting to expand and sort of ramp up now for a couple of reasons. There's a number of people researching this, including ourselves, around influencing these sort of fundamental frequencies. And the sort of core focus that I like to talk about is sort of resonant fields. And really the resonant field is a combination of sort of energy, vibration and frequency. And when you sort of combine all of it together, and obviously multiple frequencies, you create what I term as a resonant field. The interesting thing about fields is resonant fields create reality. So everything we see is vibrating, everything we see is creating or emitting a frequency, and the collection of those frequencies creates resonant fields. And if we look at how these things sort of make themselves up, we see that there's an energy in the universe that sort of plays out that creates a movement. That movement creates a vibration. That vibration creates a frequency. That frequency creates geometry from which subatomic particles can start to sort of move around. So the geometry, so the frequency creates a geometry. The geometry is like a blueprint for subatomic particles to start to come together and create whatever is to be created through that sort of frequency. So it's almost like the geometry is this resonant field that subatomic particles are attracted to and sort of coalesce together as a blueprint to create everything we see, a human, Zoom, a computer, rocks, trees, whatever it might be, is all created out of that sort of process.
well, what about the particles themselves? Like, didn't
Yeah.
something create them as opposed to them attracting to the geometrical structure to create matter
Yeah.
and reality?
So again, the sort of frequency informs or starts to create these subatomic particles. So
Ah,
again, if we think of superstring theory, the strings start to vibrate. The vibration creates the particles, or starts to
ah.
pull energy from the universe to create the particles. Those particles then coalesce together or come together, and on we go. So it's sort of like they call the particles into reality in this dimension of existence. And
Mm.
so when it calls, it's a bit like, the frequency in the universe sort of sings to the energy of the universe, which creates and forms these particles. And the particles keep coalescing together because of the frequency that's being emitted, and that starts to create matter as we know it.
Okay, very cool. Now, there's some terminology that people are familiar with that, would love your feedback on how that connects to
Of
what you're
course.
saying.
Yeah.
So, in your, languaging, vernacular explanation, what is the 0 point and what is the 0 point field? Are they the same? And how does that segue into geometry?
Yeah. So the 0 point field, in my sort of opinion, is almost like the purest form of the frequency or vibration of the universe. So it's in its purest form. So we can get 0 point energy in sort of anything really by coming down to its most pure form. And when we talk about frequency medicine, the 0 point energy really is the fundamental frequency of anything that exists. Now, we can look at fundamental frequency from a universal perspective and go, okay, what's the sort of fundamental 0 point energy of the whole universe? Or we could go, what's the 0 point energy of Karen, or the 0 point energy of the brick wall, or the 0 point energy of anything? And really, my view of that is it's sort of its core fundamental frequency that sort of ignites everything that sort of unfolds next to then create that thing into to manifest or materialize in this dimension of reality.
Okay. Well, I,
Yeah,
I used to call it or some people would call it the seat of all creation,
yeah, totally,
which is, in alignment, with what you're talking about.
totally.
I also like to say, and maybe it is not in alignment with what you're talking about,
That's
because
all
I
right.
know these are words and it's hard to describe the indescribable.
Totally, totally.
Um,
It is.
but I have called it the no thing.
Yeah.
So the void is another word, the no thing. Now I know in Egyptian, it's the different ether void. I mean, there's different
What's the
descriptions of
void? Yeah,
elements, but
yeah,
when I
yeah.
talk about the void, I'm talking about the no thing, like the potential
Totally.
of creation, but not actually created or manifested yet.
Yeah. So the no thing is the start of sort of everything and nothing all at the same time. And in the no thing, which the Egyptian termed the void, uh, all potential exists, but nothing
Yeah.
exists at that moment. So if we go back to 0 point energy from a universal perspective, that's where it actually sits. It sits in that everything potential and nothing potential in one moment. And that 0 point then is sort of transferred to the next thing, which then starts to create the fundamental frequency. So there's a background frequency that's running, or energy that's running in the universe constantly. So even this idea of the nothing is sort of, there's still something in a way. Like
Yeah, that's
it's that
confusing.
mind-boggling sort of, well, how can you have everything and nothing? And really, it's because it's that absolute fundamental sort of energy that exists that has every potential within it, and no potential within it all at the same time. Now, that stillness, or if we think of nothing, and see this again, this is the interesting part with humans, right? We don't really understand what nothing is, and we don't really understand what infinity is.
True.
And infinity and nothing all exist in the same moment, same space, and they're really, I don't know, could you call it two sides of the same coin type of thing? Where you've got the infinity of everything and the, 0 point of nothing, or the nothingness. But I still don't think we fully appreciate or understand what that actually means. So for me, the best way to understand it from a 0 point energy for anything is that sort of core fundamental frequency of potential that exists in all things. The true sort of 0 point energy from a universal perspective is that, almost like that starting point of everything. So when we're trying to understand, okay, how does this vibration frequency thing create, or this resonant field create reality? Where does it actually start from? Where does it come from? And it comes from that core 0 point energy, which creates, and the only way I can understand it, or is it creates this sort of wobble in the universe, right? So it creates this wobble based on what it's wishing to
Hmm.
materialize. Oh, my
Yeah,
Lord.
I know.
And
It's like, do we call it, like I've called it an idea.
yeah, yeah. Or
Like,
consciousness, even like a
yeah,
particle of consciousness. I don't know.
yeah.
It's a tricky one to fully
And
understand and
yeah, because the
describe.
full words is not exactly like intention is like, it's not quite that, but it's
It's not
like God
quite.
wanting to know itself. So,
Yeah. So
um,
there is a consciousness to it,
yeah,
and again, as humans, we don't really understand consciousness. Certainly, from a science point of view, have no idea really about consciousness. There's lots of postulation and thoughts and potentials of what it could be, but consciousness, doesn't just exist within us; it exists outside of ourselves, and there's a greater consciousness that's playing out. And that greater consciousness creates these wobbles, and these wobbles create vibration, which create frequency, and off we go again.
yeah,
And so that 0 point is potentially, I don't know, do we call it like the first thought of the universe in a way?
yeah. It does
That
feel like that.
where does that
It's
spur from? That
potential. It's
correct? Yeah,
yeah.
it's that ultimate potential. And again, it's nothing and infinity all at the same moment that collide and meet together, so
Mm-hmm.
that anything and everything's possible in that 0 point. This is why I like, sort of like to refer it back to us as individuals, that we have a 0 point energy field to us. And this is the fundamental sort of resonance field that is the truth of who we absolutely are. Get into meditation, and when we get into that sort of focus or that nothingness, right, we go into that meditation, then infinite potential can appear in front of us, and we can actually step into that. Now, that's us individually going into what you might call 0 point energy. You're coming back to that fundamental resonance of who you truly are. And our bodies are always calling us back to that. We
Yeah,
just
it's very
created a society
interesting.
that keeps us busy enough not to go there you know, as much as we could, or.
Or the thought, or maybe it's a spiritual misconception of transcending the
Yeah.
body to
Yes.
say, well, in order to be fully spiritual, we just have to get rid of these bodies. But what everything that I've uh, you know, understood to this point is really being in the body is actually the
Yeah.
key, not being
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it's that greater awareness of nothing and everything. So it is sort of coming into that 0 point where you can transcend awareness and be in that greater expansive
Yep,
consciousness where you can connect on the in and the out, and you just
the
and
unity.
yeah, and I think for me one of the things that helps me is to think of things as resonant fields, right? That I connect into that, and even when you're trying to deal with things that might be happening in your life, stresses or anxieties or problems or issues or even feelings that may come up about certain things, what I like to do to help me not get attached to anything in particular is just to think of things in resonant fields. So if
Mm.
someone, let's go real simple here. If someone says, "Oh, I don't like you," you might see something on social media, or a family member or somebody says they don't like you, that I don't like you energy gets translated into an emotion or a feeling, and we feel a wounding, or we feel sad or upset, or whatever it is we might feel. One of the things that helps me to not disconnect from it, but get to the truth of it, so back to that 0 point or fundamental frequency, is to sense it as frequency, as a resonant frequency field, as opposed to a feeling or a thought, which is still a resonance, right? But we've given meaning to it.
Yeah, we've
When you
labeled it.
think, we've labeled it, right? Now that labeling then gets us to connect with all of the things that have offended us or hurt us, or, do you know
Baggage.
what I mean? And it's baggage, that one, yes, trauma, whatever you want to call it. So then that activates. So this one resonance that comes to you, this one sort of frequency that plays to you, which says, "I don't like you," then activates all of those fundamental, those frequencies that have played out through your life. Whereas if I can just see it as a resonant field or frequency, and I can sense the vibration of that, the frequency of it, I now have a choice to do something with that. So I can transition, I can take that resonance and change the quality of it so that it assimilates back into the universe rather than triggering too much within me. Now, this is obviously easier said than done, because when someone triggers you at a deep level, of course, the first thing that happens is the ego will grab hold of it, get terribly offended. It'll then play out story, right, around how you're offended and how terrible that is and how terrible they are and how dare they, blah, blah. We just get caught up in it. But again, if we just translate it back to, well, it's just a frequency. It's just a resonant frequency that's played out. It's not real. It's not true. Then I can keep away from deep offense because I'm not attaching or collecting other stories to amplify the effect of that thing.
Yeah, like depersonalizing
Totally.
it into that
Totally.
thing.
Yeah. Totally
Yeah.
depersonalizing it, right? And then I don't connect other stories and the ego doesn't get so involved. And because really that's the part of us that gets most wounded when things like this happen, right? And it's not necessarily real or true. And, we have control over how we respond to things. And it helps thinking about that effect or response as a resonant frequency as opposed to a feeling or a thing,
Yeah, I,
because
I
it's
think that's
actually
really
nothing.
helpful because it lessens the chances of us reacting. And therefore, if
Yeah,
we're not reacting, then we
yeah,
can actually respond.
correct. And
Yeah.
if we think about the truth of it, all it is a resonant frequency. If someone actually says words, right, it's just a resonant frequency. Now we've attached
Mm.
to that sound a word, right? We then attach to that word a meaning. We then attach to that meaning a whole string of
Story.
stuff, correct, story. But at the fundamental level, 0 point, if we come back to that fundamental level, it's just a resonant frequency. So if I catch it at that moment, then I can transform it, transcend it, dissolve it, do whatever I like with it at that moment before it connects in at a story level.
Mm.
Uh, and I can change the resonant frequency of it. Now, that's then going to change the echo that then gets sent back. And, we talk often, people talk about this concept of love, right? Which again is just a
Mm.
frequency.
Hmm.
What we want to try and do is send love to these poor people who are maybe knocking or saying bad things or whatever. Um, and again, when I connect at the frequency level, resonance level, I then get to choose, well, what resonance do I echo back?
Hmm.
And I can change the frequency. And then I can play that sort of spiritual game, as they might call
Yeah, that's
it.
fascinating because there was uh someone I was working with, and they had this emotion that had seeded, for lack of a better word, when she was really, really young.
Yeah.
And then when I was working with her, I like to ask questions, as you know. So I'm
Yeah,
asking all these
absolutely.
questions and found
Yeah.
out that this seed emotion that seeded when she was 3 or something like that had
Yes.
fractalized and duplicated itself over many,
Totally.
many, many stories over her life.
Totally.
So it could have been 50,
Totally.
60, I can't remember. So we ended
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
transmuting the original seed. We call it a seed
Perfect.
emotion.
Yeah.
The funny thing is the intuition, or whatever you want to call it, source team, said to flip it to the polar
Yes.
opposite.
Totally.
So that's like,
Totally.
if it's going up like this, we're actually going like
Correct.
this to
Correct.
cancel it out.
Cancel out. That's absolutely the way to cancel it out. And then to cancel out the stories that have then played out on from that is we start to place within that fundamental frequency things like harmonics and octaves and chord
Mm.
frequencies. And I think this is some of the sort of latest research that we're working on that I have found makes the biggest difference. And you can then cancel out echoes over time and space, because these
Yeah.
echoes become octaves of the same frequency or harmonics of the same frequency. And that frequency could be a destructive frequency, like a negative emotion or thought or event. These are just what we might call disharmonic resonant frequencies. There's actually nothing negative or positive about anything. They're just harmonic versus disharmonic resonant frequencies, right? Both have a valid role to play. Both are positive or negative or whatever we want to call it. But when we think about it, if something's sort of destructive or negative, then what we're looking at is disharmonic resonant frequency versus a harmonic resonant frequency. When we have a disharmonic resonant frequency, what it then is going to create over time and space is things like octaves of that frequency or harmonics of that disharmonic resonant frequency. So if you can, like you did, play the equal or opposite frequency to cancel that out, then if you overlay octaves or harmonics or chords, depending on what's going on, you can then cancel out the echo through time and space that first frequency, right, created.
Ah, yes, yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So you talked about love earlier. Let me go back to that for a moment, because
sure.
my, let's just say, conversations, in my limited, vocabulary is like one. A lot of times I've asked in the past about, healing and things like that, what would be helpful for this person, so on and so forth. So I've been getting the message to be love, but not just, people always say unconditional love, unconditional love. Well, it wasn't that, which is fascinating to me. So I'm trying to, use an English word to describe it. And the best word I got was big love. So some of my very, very, very sensitive folks who in other timelines were just pure light, but had
Yeah.
volunteered to to come help out in this,
Yeah.
that one of the things that they can quote unquote do to be more comfortable as they're doing their work here on the planet, and things are shifting very quickly, and they shift really quickly because like they're just used to being light and just shifting,
Yes.
is to
Yes.
be loved. So we keep getting the message to be the frequency of big love, not unconditional love, not exactly that, but almost like there's a bigger umbrella. And then when I dove kind of into, well, what is that? What I was getting was that if you have the singularity, 0 point field, if you will, that the first iteration of anything that's manifested in our dimension or world is love, and then everything comes from that. So that's like a really wild theory. Just curious if
No,
you
I love the
heard of
theory,
that or.
Well, no, I love the theory, and I think I have one that sort of dovetails nicely with that, and that my dream is that this concept of dark energy or dark matter or whatever the quantum physicists are searching for, actually they find that it's a particle of love, which is that fundamental. So when the universe does its wobble, when the energy, and possibly that the energy of the universe, which creates a wobble, that wobble is that particle of love. It's the first thing that it creates, right? That particle of love then creates the vibration and frequency, and on we go. That's certainly possible. Again, with humans, we have beautifully, maybe on purpose, who knows, watered down or made murky some of these core concepts like love.
Yeah.
We have flippantly taken love and used it in many different ways, but very few that are at the truth of it, right? I love
Like
my
I love
car and I love
chocolate.
my house. That's right. I love chocolate. And it's like, well, really? I mean, if you looked at the purity, fundamental frequency, again, go
Right.
back to that 0 point resonant field idea that we talked about, a resonant frequency idea. What is the purity of that? Now, this is where frequency is beautiful, because we can isolate and contain one frequency amongst billions of frequencies that exist,
Yep.
and isolate that frequency. Whereas words, when we can't really isolate it like that, just because of how we've messed up our language palette. Certainly in English we have, and I'm sure it's probably similar to other languages. Some of the more traditional, ancient, sort of tribal languages, they isolated versions of things like the one I love is like Eskimo. You know, the Eskimos have like maybe 6 words, I think, for snow. They don't just have one word for snow, they have a variety of words for snow to
Yeah.
get the specifics of it, right? And I think, I think there is a fundamental frequency of love, and then we've just manipulated it around that there are versions of it. So imagine if, love is pure white. Well, we have this pure white, and then we have this sort of off white, and then we have, moving into the grays.
Mm.
And maybe the love for the car, I love my car, that's more in the gray zone of love than
Right,
than the
right.
pure whiteness of love, right? So the pure frequency of love. So therefore we've maybe a bit like a radio station. You tune to 101.1 radio station frequency. Let's imagine that's pure love. And then we've sort of gone out from that, and we've got 101.2, 101.3, then 102 and 103, and it's still in the 100, right? The 10 something, but we've moved away from the purity of it. And
Mm.
again, when we come back to fundamental frequencies or resonant fields and resonant frequencies, we can pinpoint the specificness, the specificity of it, and therefore make big changes to things that we're trying to shift and change. And I think this is why frequency medicine, of this idea of frequency is the next step in wellness,
Mm-hmm. Well, you were talking
next
about
evolution.
yes,
Yeah,
the disharmonic frequencies. Just wanted to clarify something.
yeah, totally.
Um, so say someone has what we would consider a toxin in their bodies. Now,
Yes,
Rife and others would like destroy the toxin, would
yeah,
disintegrate it, right? Would that be considered a
potentially.
disharmonic frequency
Correct.
to the
Correct.
toxin?
Yeah, that would be. So the interesting thing about this frequency itself, there's no right or wrong, bad, positive,
Right,
negative frequencies per
right.
se until you relate it to something.
Ah,
Okay?
yes, yes,
So
yes.
so so in the universe,
Mhm.
there's infinite amount of frequencies that exist. None of them are bad. None of them are good. They just are, right? They're just frequencies. Until it starts to relate to something, then we will notice either a disharmonic relationship to that thing, be it a human, right? Or a harmonic relationship to the human. So a
Ah,
toxin in the body is a disharmonic resonant pattern that's been created in the body. So it could be from a parasite, for example, or a virus or a something, right? That is disharmonic to the resonant field of that thing, in this case, a
mm,
human. So what's happening then is that that disharmony creates a wobble throughout the body, so a disharmonic resonant frequency that interferes with the resonance of the body, and that can create illness, what we would consider illness. So when we're trying to counter that, we are looking at finding a frequency that is disharmonic to the disharmonic thing that's in the body, right? So again, if it was a cancer cell or a virus, let's take a virus, right? So a virus
well, some
holds
of
a
us don't believe
specific,
in viruses, but anyway, go
okay,
ahead.
whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with you on that, but let's imagine, that it is there, or a parasite, or
Yeah,
who
we'll
knows,
say a
right?
parasite that creates a toxin, and we
There
prefer
you
not
go.
to be
So,
in the body.
or a toxin, right? We can imagine a toxin particle or whatever it might appear like, and what we're finding is a disharmonic resonant frequency that affects that toxin and theoretically destroys that toxin, smashes it, or gets it to sort of assimilate itself back into the 0 point nothingness and just starts to disappear, because we're looking for the disharmonic resonant frequency that's going to destroy or remove or assimilate that thing back into the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep.
Now that could be so that the body can then get rid of it, right? Just remove it. It could be that it helps, the white blood cells fully identify it and then go, right, we're going to remove that. So it works beautifully in harmony with the body itself, so that the body can do the magic that it does. So
Okay, so
again, yeah,
so that gets into the whole germ theory, train theory. So I know we're going down a rabbit hole. So
we're starting to go down a rabbit
the
hole,
germ
right? Because
theory,
what's real, right?
yeah. Well, in the germ theory, there's a germ, and then there's
Correct.
a potentially a germ toxin. We do know that there's like botulinum toxin and different
Totally.
Clostridia toxins from different
Yeah,
bacteria, things that are
there
harmful and
is.
poisonous. So
Totally.
Rife and others are focused on getting rid of or destroying or neutralizing the
Destroying. Yep.
toxin.
Totally.
Now, there's a
Correct.
part of me, because maybe the the Chinese and training, Chinese medicine training, it was never
Yeah.
about the thing. It was mostly about how healthy the terrain was. Or
Correct.
the immune system in Western medicine
Correct.
was. So we were less concerned about the bacteria, the virus, the toxin, whatever, and
Yep.
more concerned
Totally.
about how strong the person is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I have not bought a whole bunch of these machines or used the frequencies.
Yeah.
First of all, because I could probably generate it myself, but
Totally.
second of all,
Totally.
I don't know. So it's something about using, a specific frequency to kill a virus that just doesn't resonate with me for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. So I think there's two ways to look at this. One is uh, to theoretically target the thing, right, the bacteria or whatever we want to call it. The other, and this is what we try to do, and this is where I think a lot of the machines have missed, right? So a lot of the focus of these machines, and I bought a whole heap of them to test them and try
I
them,
know
and
you did.
this is where I know the miss that's happening with these machines, in that they're trying to find a group of sort of fundamental frequencies to attack whatever might be going on. And
Yeah.
and I'm not sure that's the most productive way to do it. So this is where we start to, put in things like octaves and harmonics, and because
Mm,
what we want to try and do is we want to try and activate the body to do whatever it needs to do to remove or to neutralize or harmonize, which is what I like to call it, whatever disharmonic's playing out in the body. And again, if we think about the disharmonic not as a bacteria or a virus or a whatever, but as just a frequency, a disharmonic
yes.
frequency, what we're trying to do is either neutralize that frequency by theoretically playing equal opposite, but also applying the harmonics and the octaves to it, so that it's not just attacking this one thing, but it's actually harmonizing the body so that the body can realign its energy field. And when the body's energy field or resonant frequency is aligned, these things can't come in and attack and affect and do things. It just can't. The only way these things can influence the human body is if the body is out of harmonic alignment with itself.
Mm,
So in essence, the body has started to create disharmony around itself. Then these specific things, or what we might term as specific things, can get into the body and start to make a bit of a mess of it in some respects. Whereas if the body is
mm,
fully aligned in its resonant frequency, it's very hard for these things to affect the body. Certainly, some of these more, well, are they natural, maybe, or artificial things? Um, we know there are chemical structures, and chemistry has been very clever at manipulating resonant frequencies to shift, alter, and change what's going on in the body, and that some of that's medicine miracles and stuff where we can have surgeries and put people to sleep and do all these sort of amazing things to reduce pain and all of those things. But again, they're all coming down to this concept of sort of resonant frequency fields and how those fields then play out with themselves.
mm. Well, it's one thing that on the one hand, I recognize that there are a lot of people spending a lot of time and energy alerting the other human beings on the earth, saying, hey, 5G is dangerous, this is dangerous, this is a toxin, watch out, that kind of thing. And I get that, and I respect their efforts,
Totally.
to share, hey, this is disharmonious to the human body.
Yeah,
At the same time,
totally.
I also have this belief that um, we can upgrade or recalibrate our
Totally.
systems so that it
Totally.
is not harmful. I realize there is
No.
theoretically a time lag, although quantum is no time, right? So
Well,
to re-educate the body. There's
yeah.
actually a study, you may or may not be aware of it, but there's a study
Yeah.
of red blood cells. So did dark
Yes.
field microscopy, and
Yes.
they put a non-5G phone, next to the person.
Yeah.
They were not using it, and their blood kind of ran into a rouleau formation, which is
Yeah.
unhealthy. So they're kind of
Totally.
focused on that, and doesn't look good for humans, okay? And cell
No,
phone. That was
no.
3G.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
however, I remember looking at that study. There was one guy, nothing happened.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, wait. I know that all these other people had problems, but I want to know what that guy's
What
doing.
happened? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the
So we
difference?
know it's possible. So if people go,
Totally.
5G is terrible. I think Arthur Firstenberg, his book says like every time we introduce a new EMF wave of some sort, people die.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I believe that. I could, there's evidence. I can see that. So even when, 5G people die, birds die, whatever, I think that we can recalibrate ourselves. So what you're saying is there's a way to help us be stronger of who we
Totally,
really are, like more of who we
totally,
really are. And that recalibrates
totally.
us to be able to be very strong when it comes to potentially disharmonic frequencies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's nothing we can't theoretically, um, sort of activate ourselves into a what people might call a higher frequency, but I call a more harmonic frequency. And the
Mm,
more harmonic you are, which is the more you're vibrating at your unique, beautiful resonant field, the more you're able to push other disharmonic resonant fields away, and they can't infect or affect you. They just
mhm.
can't. And so,
That's
what
very
this is
cool.
trying to inform us to do is, again, that concept of raising our frequency.
Yeah.
Is it really raising our frequency? It's more being in harmony with the resonant field that's within us, and we can
Mm,
elevate that and strengthen that and activate
strengthen.
that at a deeper
Yes.
level, right?
Yeah.
And when we do, then disharmonic resonant frequencies find it very hard to infiltrate, very, very hard, because harmonic frequencies tend to trump disharmonic frequencies.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So tell us
So
about the
that's
new
all we have to do.
project that you're working on, the
Yeah,
frequency
yeah,
mapping
yeah.
project.
So quantum harmonics is a process and a program that we are running now to help people to fully step into this sort of frequency medicine concept. So the project or the program we're running is a frequency medicine program, but looking at it from a very deep resonant field point of view, and looking at, okay, how do we overlay and apply various aspects of frequency to activate and strengthen and someone's unique resonant field, which is going to help them to come back into full harmony and therefore overcome, or what you might consider healing. It's not really, it's just shifting and changing people back to, it's a little bit like, you imagine you're vibrating, and when you're vibrating in harmony with yourself, everything is this beautiful harmonic sort of dance. It's like listening to beautiful music that makes your heart sing, and you just feel, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like sitting in the middle of a forest with a beautiful river running in front of you. You just feel that, it's so yummy. That's harmony. That's harmonic resonant frequencies. When you're in that, it's very hard for a disharmonic resonant frequency to penetrate and sort of come into it. So what we're teaching is, how do you do that, and how do we do that for our clients? How do we realign their resonant frequency? How do we then counteract some of the things that might be already existing within their body, be that a sort of disease construct or an emotion or a whatever, to help them to realign into that true resonant frequency that they are, therefore vibrating in harmony with themselves and the universe or their environment. And then they become healthier, happier, and more abundant, because when you're in that state, then harmony tends to come to you rather than disharmony. So harmonic things tend to appear in front of you, which might look like serendipity or luck or good fortune or whatever you want to call it. But that generally is what sort of happens. So the process is really about learning exactly what I'm talking about, learning about, well, what is frequency? What is the truth of that? How does the universe work? What is harmony, harmonics and octaves and chords, and how do we then apply that to a client, for example? So it's sort of a practitioner process to help upskill or expand skills, but it's also a very personal journey about, okay, how can I use this on myself? And this is something I use every day. I play frequencies every day depending on where I'm at from a harmonic point of view, and we live in this, we live in a soup or a sea of frequencies that are playing all around us. And depending what happens and how we're triggered and how we're feeling and what's going on, you can get to a point where you can sense these resonant fields, disharmonic fields coming towards you, and you can do something about it. So, one of the things that we work on in this process is a thing called consciousness technology and learning how to read resonant frequency fields so that you can tell if something's coming in towards you from a sort of a disharmonic resonance. You can tell where it is around you or in a client, and then you can work on, okay, what do I need to apply to counteract that disharmonic resonant frequency, mainly by strengthening your own resonant frequency and just reminding the body to come back into alignment.
Okay. Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. Yesterday, I
Yeah.
was actually at a festival, and I was in a tent with the other musicians, and there was a
Yes.
woman smoking. I'm not sure what she was smoking, but she was smoking something. And I started feeling like a little short of breath. Now, mind
Okay.
you, there was somebody else who was actually allergic to the stuff with me, and my friend, and she went outside. I went outside. It's fine. The funny thing though is I kept feeling it after, and I thought this is
Correct.
unusual. This is very strange.
Yeah.
Long story short, what I got was that there was actually a ghost in the tent sitting on the table. There
Yeah.
for music, but a very, very old, like 150-year-old. But he died of emphysema.
Yeah.
So
There
I
you
was
go.
actually empathizing to some degree.
Well, you were sensing that resonant frequency that was coming
Yeah.
from
So
that
I had to
and
figure
the
out what it was,
disharmony.
but it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
interesting.
Totally.
But then the cool thing is, and what you're teaching was really important is knowing who we really are, right? Knowing what
Yeah.
is our center,
Yeah.
what is our norm being
Yes.
healthy, hopefully, so that
Yeah. That's
when
right.
we're not us, or not
Yes.
feeling us, we go, what's going on
Yeah.
here? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very
You can feel
powerful.
the disharmony or the harmony that's playing out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's super exciting. Super
It is
exciting.
exciting. So,
Yeah.
when does this happen? Launch? How do people get a hold of you? Learn more about the program?
Yeah, it's happening towards the end of this year. Best thing to do right now is to join Heart of the Matrix
Mm.
Facebook group, because that's where you're going to hear about it and be able to learn more about it. And you'll see when we sort of do that launch. We're taking a group through at the moment, and then we'll be inviting people to come on board for the next intake shortly. But if you just join Heart of the Matrix Facebook group, so just request to join, and you'll be able to hear all about it because I'm often teaching, talking, and introducing it there. So
Yeah, that's
perfect.
great. Yeah, that's
Yay.
such great drops that you put in the Facebook group and also your circle
Yay.
group. Just really neat stuff, and they're short and
Absolutely.
sweet and just boom. It's really
Yeah.
awesome. I aspire to be
Perfect.
that prolific.
Ah, you are. You do an amazing job,
I do other
Karen. So
things,
it's
but
perfect.
it's getting there,
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
there.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcus. Really enjoy
Thank
having
you.
these dimensional deep dives with you, and
Yay. I love them
yay,
too. They're
look forward
great.
to
Thank
the
you.
next topic. And for those
Yay.
listening in, thank you so much for joining us. And all of Marcus's links are down below this video. And remember to like and subscribe to the show if you
Beautiful.
liked it. Thank you, Marcus. Thanks, everyone. Till next
Thank
time.
you. Ciao.
Bye.